meeting, which is the one that we had on Friday. Just a couple of things for your information is that we will have 3 projects, with one of those projects a sub-project. So there's the one where we're looking at heavy vehicles, and when you go into the SharePoint site, you'll actually see that I've put the action plan in there. There'll be more that comes out of that space, but we've certainly in the middle of that. So I'll be coordinating the action plan, and then we'll sort of be looking at how do we intersect with that development of that product for implementation for next year.
Do you want to mute out there?
Yes. Okay. The other thing, the other project is the Bachelor of Age Services. Because that's actually a current product development, we're going to be involved with that, and it's probably a pretty good project for us to be involved with because it'll give us exposure into the higher ed space. I've sort of got a bit of a sense that that's probably, people have probably know about them and know how they sort of operate, but this will give us a really hands-on how we actually operate in that project space and with that product. It's a little bit different because the skills points are not actually developing it. It will be the regional team, which will be under delivery, implementation and performance. And that will be a bit interesting because they actually need our support as well. So I think it'll be beneficial. Obviously, Helen Cosgrove, who's the head of Skills Point, will be involved, but we will be moving ahead with that. They need to get a project coordinator in place, so that will be coming. It won't be immediate. And the final one will be recognition of prior learning. I have spoken to TAFE Digital just to get a bit of a sense on how they're operating. They're actually pulling together a recognition tool, but I think what we need to be aware of is what is that process and how are they actually developing that, and have they taken into consideration all of the other recognition tools that we've got. But as a sub-project of recognition, we will also, we've been given an orphan project, if that makes sense. So the orphan projects that are coming through are projects where there's no one that can actually lead them. And because this is a recognition project, it will give us an opportunity to not only look at the tools and how it will operate and from the strategic view with TAFE Digital, but we'll also have an operational side because this will be directly with a business. So we'll be working with war veterans. So that will be a bit interesting as well. So there are 3 projects that we'll be working on. Probably the heavy vehicles will be the one that will come into play very quickly. Bachelor of Age Services, it'll probably take a little bit longer. And then the recognition one, strategically will be involved straight away, and we will have to very quickly pick up how we're going to work with war veterans on that. So that will give us exposure to a business as well, which will be a bit of an interesting one. Now, I think apart from that, because we only had the meeting Thursday, so that was really only Friday meetings. But the other things I should let you know is I'll be going to the head of Skills Points meetings, the first one today, so that's a weekly meeting, so I'll be able to give you an update of what happens at those meetings. And I'm also on what was the other one? There's also, you may have heard about Meadowbank. Meadowbank is looking at how they make an educational precinct between schools and vet, so I'll be going to that one as well, which will be a bit interesting. And there's another one. Yeah, there's some other ones that are going to come through, but I won't talk too much about them because you'll forget about them. But just letting you know, I'm probably on about 4 different meetings now. So in this space, I'll be able to give you some updates about that. So any questions or feedback about that?
Jo, I've just the orphan project, the war veterans. Is that related to RPL or is that a separate one?
It's related to RPL.
Yeah, I thought so. Thanks.
Jo, is that product development plan for optical dispensing? I think it is. Is that?
That's the one. Thank you. That was the other one. That's why there was 4 projects.
And I was wondering if that plan is at SharePoint as well, because I think that'll be a relevant reference, that model of the project plan for our implementation and possibly others.
Yep, I can share that. I didn't mention optical. I've got a meeting this week about optical. The problem with that area, there was actually commercial funding to develop the product, which is a bit interesting, but the skills point doesn't have any team players in that space. So I'll know a little bit more about that, but that seems like it's not going to be a priority for quite a while, but it's a good point, Kim. Just to let everyone know, there is actually a product development plan that Skills Points are using. So I'll make another folder for optical dispensing and I'll put that plan in there. So if you can make that as an action for me, Joni, if that's all right. Is that okay, Joni?
Oh, yes. Yes, yep. Sorry, it's fine. No. Yep.
Thanks. Any other questions? Okay. All right. So let's get the team updates. Let's go with the picks. Any updates? Remembering we've only really had one day, so it's sort of 1 or 2 days, Thursday, Friday. So you don't need to...
And I had Friday off, so maybe Kim's done a lot of work actually on Friday in terms of some thinking. Do you want to give an update, Kim? Or no? Okay. So I mean, we all on Thursday we worked on the 30, 60, 90, and I guess I don't know whether we've had any feedback on that yet, or whether that's what we're going to talk about tomorrow, Jo.
Yep. As I alluded to, Peter was really happy with what you'd put together, and I've put together a high-level one, which I'm going to discuss in a moment. Yep.
Okay, good. And so, yeah, on Friday, I just know that Kim started to flesh out some of the things that we've put in those plans, but I think that's an update from us. Are you happy with that, Kim? Yep.
Thank you. Okay, the e-potters.
We spent Thursday afternoon doing our action plan, and then Friday I think we kind of both independently started to go through intranets and try to get some information relating to course offerings and the process and flowcharts with that. So I think we've kind of started a little repository in the SharePoint, set up a folder, and we kind of went a little bit round and round, as in, do we just want to put links or actually download some documents? And we thought better not download documents because things are changing so quickly. So what we've done is just, I created a little Word document, and we've got links and a blurb before each link saying what type of information will be found there. So I think we're just kind of starting our investigation and looking at the whole overview right now. Joni can add her say.
Oh, no. I was just going to say, yeah, we're still conscious that we're waiting for one more person. So we're just trying to put a clear path in terms of what research we're doing so that when the new person joins us, they can see what we've done and where we've been going with stuff too. So.
Yeah, no, that's great. Yeah, thank you. Okay, the assessment designers. What's ADS? What's
support? Assessment.
Okay.
Support.
Okay, right. Got it.
Lucia, do you want to?
Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
So Thursday, Friday, I pretty much took from the work plan and kind of tried to reduce it and made a few flowcharts in the different functions across from beginning to end. And so, and I suppose my idea behind that is that the functions then we can, it almost falls into a 30, 60, 90 days, and from that flowchart we can then start to develop, the framework and the blueprint, and maybe, looking at other bits and pieces. But just to sort of, as at a glance, be able to see the process behind what's involved.
Okay, great. Yeah. Dave, do you want to add anything more to that?
Oh, just that now we've got a sort of a direction out list. We're going to start to now fatten up those functions and get into more detail about now. So we've got a way forward now.
Yeah. Great. Okay. So I suppose the only other comments, and you'll see that I've made one on, I suppose I'm going to meet with each of the teams separately, and I'll start to do that now. I think we keep this meeting weekly, and then I'll have one or just have meetings with the sub teams, and then when I sort of think that we need to do some planning or look at how we're doing things, I'll bring everybody together. I suppose my if I can just move into number 5 there about the feedback to the teams. The only thing I suppose at this point is that everybody's done it slightly differently, and no, I'm not overly concerned about that, but I do put it to the team, do we need to have consistency around that? And I'm not saying that everybody has to have it done right now, but I think going forward for the 30, 60, 90 day plan, I'm not too concerned because I want you to have ownership of that, and I think that's fine. But probably when we get to the end of June, when we develop our work plan, that's when we'll look at the consistency, I think, at this point. So provided everybody's fine with that, I think that's a way forward. Everybody okay with that?
Yes, I think, from my point of view, I think at this point, since we're just kind of throwing ideas and we're all doing a little bit, we're in different areas of the task, it's probably good that they should be a little bit different. Because the roles are a little bit different in themselves anyway. But as long as we get to the end point, I think that should be okay. That's what I think.
Yeah, so we will have a work plan or a business plan for 18, 19 from June anyway. So I think that will be when we actually have a consistent plan. So I think that's okay too. Because remember, we've still got a lot to learn. We've still got a lot to really get our heads around coming for this 3 months. So I think, it's important for us just to sort of try and connect with as many people, with as much information as we can, so that then we can get a bit of a sense, are we sort of in the right space. So I think that's fine as long as everybody else is okay for that. So thanks, Lucia.
Okay.
Anybody got any problems with that? No? Is that okay? Good. All right. So what we might do now is I might just go and show you what I've put together as our overarching plan, remembering that what I've tried to do is to sort of demonstrate to us how we're actually working together, but then where are we actually heading to by the end of June. So I think I've tried to sort of follow it. It's probably not great, but I think it's okay. So what I'll do is I'll just share my desktop. No, I think I'll just go with this one actually. I was going to take you to the SharePoint site, but I'll just do this. Okay, so you'll see that this is pretty familiar to the one that Customer Experience put together. I went with Design, Test and Validate only because I think we've got an opportunity to actually do that as far as looking at the projects. I think we've actually got that opportunity. So that's how I've sort of done it. And I think it's also based on the fact of what everybody's actually put into their plans. So I've sort of done that, the design, test, validate, with the intent that we'll have a PDS framework 2018-19. Now, I suppose at this point, this is new to what you're actually looking at. So I've just made the 3 points and happy to take any feedback that anybody wants to give me there. But I might give you a second just to digest it. Does that look big? I don't know. Can someone tell me it looks big?
It's gone.
Yeah,
It's gone.
indeed.
I was trying to make it. Okay, let's see if we can do that. Is it back?
No, I think you need to go back to the little presenting icon and start that process again.
Oh yes, an error occurred. There we go.
Oh,
So whatever happened there? Oh,
Yeah, we still don't see it. So yeah, you might need to just restart off that little icon, present icon, and just go through it again. Select the screen again.
can you see it now?
it says loading.
It's loading. Yeah.
That's promising. Yep,
Yep, we got it.
that's good.
All right, so I'm not going to try and make it bigger. You'll have to look at it as it is.
Sorry, Joe. Reading that, there was one thing you mentioned in our little Friday get-together that you haven't mentioned to the group yet, and I just remembered when I saw the reference here to the Learning Bank. I don't know if you want to bring that up. You did discuss that. Anyways, I'll continue reading. Sorry.
Okay. Although it's not all official, it looks as though the Learning Bank will be sitting within product development support. It aligns fairly well with what we're doing, and I think we needed to actually establish a close relationship to it. So Peter's putting a proposal to Lucy, which is looking as though that will actually happen. So that will mean that we'll have another sub-team, which will be the Learning Bank. It's just trying to determine how the product catalogue to what the Learning Bank will be. So thanks, Marcus. So I think what you're sort of looking at there is it's very high level, but I think it touches on exactly what all of you are doing. And I'm happy to take any feedback there.
Joe, I just have a question. With the in the design where it says build insights around statewide processes and work instructions around the SMS implementation, that's the student management system.
Correct.
So in all of our areas, I suppose we're all sort of touching in at that point. So in projects like that where it affects the entire team, instead of us individually going to find out what we need from it, is that something that as a whole, we would get the end-to-end processes and then we sort of take from that what we need? Or are those, potentially all of us could be going and asking for different things, but that's something that will affect all of us?
Yeah, and I think when I talk about the communication plan, that might become a bit clearer. But we're just going to build insights around all of that. We've already started talking about the statewide processes, so we just need to work out how does, I suppose it was the conversation last week about how does how do we intersect, how do we interface, who do we communicate with? And I'm going to talk a little bit more about it, but you're spot on, and that's why I think the next step is to develop the communication plan so that we're not crossing over each other and asking people for the same information, and we have to determine how do we share that information with each other when we come across certain points in the processes.
Yeah, and maybe if I don't know, if it's one member from each of the teams, you know, the AD, EPOD and whatnot, that those three people become the key communicators and they grab the information and pass it down. I don't know, but yeah.
Okay, so this must be good because you're preempting exactly what I'm going to talk about in the communication plan.
All right, I'll be quiet now.
No, it's all good points, all good points. So I realise I've just sort of thrown this at you. So, but if you sort of see anything around that you want to discuss, that's fine with me. It is organic. Caitlin pointed that out to me. I was looking for the word, but I was actually saying it anyway. So it is organic. So I suppose I've done these three, and then I've also done a bit of a plan around how I sort of see it all sort of working. And I mean, you know, it's that in itself has to be a bit fluid. You'll see that sort of May, June is when we're sort of really hotting up. And I think at this point, you know, we've started to establish the key relationships, but that will actually develop into actively participating in the business as usual projects, which we've talked about. So that's probably the second one to have a look at. And then finally on this that I've sent to Peter is just this updated one, which I've tried to update based on what you've put into the plans to me. So this is all on the SharePoint site. So what I might just do, if we can have this as an action journey that everybody reviews in the meeting, it's actually in the meeting documents, just the PDS plan, time frame, and just this overarching document, if that's okay. I might just leave it at that because I'm just sort of thinking it's a lot to take in, and and I did want to sort of talk about the communication plan, if that's okay, unless anyone's got a burning desire to say something.
Just really quickly, I noticed a couple of times my last name. It's not a big deal, but it's Gilchrist, not Crest. Gilchrist, Christ. I've noticed it in a couple of documents, so I thought I'd just point it out.
It's a big deal. My apologies.
No
for
worries.
that. Okay. All right. So let's get on to the next one, which I'll just do. Anybody else while I'm just loading this up? No? Okay. All right, so this is the actual document that's in the meeting request. I'm hoping that you can all see this as I'm clicking through. Am I right in saying that?
Yep, it's just loaded up now. Yep.
Okay. So you might remember last time we talked about the goals and the objectives. So this shouldn't be anything new to people. There was a tiny little bit of a change. I still want to talk to the PICs around that objective about the implementation of course products, because I'm not sure that we've actually still got that. And I know that Caitlin and Kim has changed that, but I'd like to sort of talk a little bit more about that. That's probably the only one that I think will change is this one that Kim and Caitlin are pretty keen to change. So we've just got to try and work out what that is. So one of the things that I was trying to work out is what, if we're looking at the framework, what are the three principles? So, and again, this is draft, and I'm looking for feedback on this. So I think what we have to develop as part of the framework is to make sure that we've got a set of principles. And this was only very quickly done, but I just want you to have a bit of a sense of where I'm sort of thinking about is obviously there's three things, I think: the product, the development, and the support. So if we put product development together, we've got to make sure that obviously the decision making, that we're putting the customer first. Obviously our goal is to have a consistent approach. So therefore we have to meet all of the regulatory requirements. And then starting to think about, what does product support mean? Like, what does that mean? Like, do we need a quality assurance? Is it a quality assurance strategy? What are the processes and the tools? So when I was thinking about this, I thought, is this product? So like when I've put product, is it product or is it product development? And I'm not sure whether this actually sort of fits or not. So if we talked about the product just solely on itself, and we took this bit away too, not sure how we get rid of that now. I probably can just backspace it. So if we were trying to think about the three pillars, product, development, support, if we tried to think about the principles for product, is there anything there, anything else that we need to consider for the principles?
Jo, in terms of the implementation role, I'm not really seeing that reflected there, sort of explicit. Well, maybe it needs to be a bit more explicit. Like, to me, essentially, product implementation is ensuring the users, people can firstly access, and secondly, able to use the product. That's kind of, to me, but correct me if I'm wrong, essentially. So, yeah, I agree, take out product development, because it sounds like we're about product development only. Yeah, so that kind of is inclusive of things like capability and requirements that the delivery groups might not have, that need to be in place, and lots of stuff. Yeah, the access.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. And I don't want to labour this too much, but it might just give you, if we're trying to think about the framework, it is about product, it is about development, and it is about support. Now, when we sort of think, it's a good point of what you were just talking about, Kim. If we think about development, like, what is our role in development? So,
Jay, just really briefly too, why I like you taking development out of the product development was because I think we're talking about a whole life cycle here, not just the development, although it's an important component, key component. Of course, there's more than that, isn't there? So I think that's what we're getting onto now. The development is one thing, but then there's also the after effects of that development and how people interact with it and the quality control, all that stuff.
That's right. So I suppose what I tried to do here is think about what were all the products that we've got, which is like ridiculous amount. Peter talks about the 1,200 courses that we've got, and also about the 15,500 units that we've got. So I just started to sort of think, well, if we're sort of talking about product, is there any, I mean, we talk about delivery modes, we need to know when the training packages, what their stages are. You know, we need to know when the training package is going to come online, when courses are going to become superseded, when they're going to become obsolete. So I think it's just trying to get a bit of a sense of, when we're talking about product, what are we actually talking about?
It's hard when it's learning, you know, but it's the product that supports learning and assessment of learning, isn't it? So the product is I know that's a term we're using, but there's probably, I can't think of a better term.
Is it assists learning or ensures? Yeah, it's something about learning outcomes, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it's both the learning, but providing the learning, whatever that is. That's a bit, you know, airy fairy, but providing the learning, but also then the assessment, the valid assessment of competency of that learning. So it's, and then a quality control around all of that, what all that means. It is a bit airy fairy. but just the word product doesn't really sort of cover it because it's so dynamic, isn't it? What it really is.
Yeah, so let's just leave that there for the moment, and let's some of the things that, so we've got development and support. So maybe we'll leave development, because even though we're not going to be involved directly in the development, we do have a quality assurance role within that. Would you agree, everybody? Yep. So what about if we just go to support, and what support, like what support do you think PDS actually plays? Like when we think about, what does that mean? What does support mean?
It's like, it's part of it, I suppose, is that standardisation. That's a bad word, but that modularisation of the product. So we have quality standards and these types of things. So that's one part, is our advice, from research and data and those types of things of that quality, so we can ensure that quality and standardisation for efficiency across the organisation.
Can't hear anybody else. Anybody else want to say anything?
I'm thinking, I don't know how to put this, but it's about for the teachers, supporting them to use the products, or making them easy to use, or even facilitating a cultural change around the way that because really this is a massive change for teachers. So the support that we provide will facilitate a cultural change, and that's that Lucy was talking about, in thinking differently about education and training. So I don't know, I'm not putting this very well at all, but something to do with how we change the way that things are done through our support. That we give them such good support that they go, I want to do it this way now,
But maybe following up from what Caitlin said, educating them. So, I might be seeing this as supporting, as in, this is the tools that we've developed, and let's show you how to use them and how you should be using them, and think about this. Do we get involved in? No. Okay.
No, but saying that, how do we influence the people that will be directly influencing the teachers?
Yeah. It's by making their life easy. So we provide the tools is one thing, but also the information and these types of things, the support, using all those words, that give the teachers a standardised, that type of thing. But this approach, which is makes their life easier, basically.
But my question would be, how do we disseminate that information? I mean, we build these amazing products with, and as simple as possible, but how are they encouraged? I mean, I know it's a directive that they have to use them, but how do we get them excited about using it?
I was going to say keeping them informed around that.
Well, it's also showing results somehow.
That's a good point.
Yeah. I know we need time to do it, but we need to be able to show results as well, even if it comes from research or whatever. But there needs to be some, why would I? Yeah, like I can understand what Lucia is saying exactly, and Kim as well.
Only because, humans are just very much set in their ways. I've always done it like this, and and you can show them, from my experience, all the compliance issues and audit reports, but, when we're asking, it's a major change. You're not doing it that way anymore. You must use these, from what I'm understanding. So it's almost they have no choice. And, there'll be resistance, there'll be that. So, yeah, again, the education that comes around that, the selling of it, the whys, the hows, the whens, I don't know.
And I think what you're expressing is about communication, so maybe the word communication should definitely be somewhere
supporting
on that
communication.
page.
That's true.
But also maybe systems, maybe not systems, but I also think that using technology will be a huge support.
Yeah, absolutely. And the system could be, maybe it's a video on whatever the tools, or whether they do a little training session in Moodle as to, all the things that we talked about. So it's not necessarily having to be in front of a bunch of people and telling them about it, but there could be different modes in how it's communicated.
I guess I'm also thinking, sorry, Dave, I'm
okay.
also thinking that our big picture systems like the SMS and the way that learning is, the way that the delivery interacts with SMS works for them, and the way that,
So
yes, because I think making it simple rather than harder, I think it's always going to be a better result at the end.
and I think that's going to be our biggest challenge, because for us to put a quality assurance process around all of this, we don't want it to stifle anything, but it's certainly going to be seen as that. So how do we make it sort of woven into the way that everybody does their business is probably our biggest challenge.
Yeah,
I think one of our aces. Oh, sorry, Kim. Just really quickly. I think one of our aces up our sleeve is the learner. Again, coming back to that focus of the learner and the outcome for them as well. Although the teachers are really important, that's really that focus on the learner. Sorry, Kim.
That's all right. I was just going to suggest that that systems using technology wells, that's actually capability. So maybe that's a separate point, capability in using systems and technology. And when we've talked about communication, we've talked about trying to embed that new practice or embed the best practice. So it's not just communicating and keeping people informed, it's also we need to embed it in the processes, embedded in the product, whatever. So maybe communicating and embedding standards and capability in systems and using technology. Just a suggestion.
Yep, I agree with Kim's point there, because no matter how good we come up with processes and standardizing workflows, checklist, whatever, if our end user, whoever it might be, whoever our client is in these particular instances, if they cannot easily find and use that information, I think that's also a key, is how, is how and where that information is going to be put so it's readily available and easy for them to access.
Excellent. Let's have a think about development, because development is a part of what we do, and I suppose it's what's our role in product development. If we're thinking, we know what all the products are, we know what the development kind of looks like, but again, that's going to be something that's done. We'll be involved with it. How do we actually interact with the development side of product development?
Do we have an opportunity, or is it possible, do you think realistically, that we would be able to influence the product design so that we can actually look at ways of, embedding new practice or that best practice in implementation? Because the shape of that could be one way that we can do it, in actually the shape of the product. And I also feel like I don't know what the product is yet, and maybe Skills Points have an idea, but I don't know if they've formalised it or not. So I think we actually need to know what the product is first, what their baseline is, and where they where they'll allow us to come in and influence it.
Which sort of goes back to the previous slide, where I started to sort of think, well, what is it? Is it the recognition? Like, we've got to have recognition evidence guides. Without sort of trying to think of another word, I just thought the curriculum, that could be a whole range of different things. That could be the sequencing of the units. It could be activities that need to be completed, just the timetabling. It could be a whole thing in curriculum. And then I think the assessments. And I think it's a good point, Kim, and it's one that sort of is really getting me thinking about how do we actually, what is the product? and we talked about the different delivery modes. Does the products change depending on what the delivery mode is? So yeah, it's about how, like, not only about what the process is, but it's actually what is the product and how is it being designed. So I think it's a good point, and one I think we should be trying to influence, if everybody agrees with that.
Yes, I think personally, I think the sooner we're in this, and whether that be up at the business case level, the more influence we would have, because obviously our area, from my understanding, is that we're the ones who are saying building the framework, and this is what you need to use to standardise. But if we only come in after the event, there's not a lot of influence we could possibly, or change minds. So the sooner the involvement is, the more, not power, but more influence we would have in design, and knowing also too, because different products might require different ways of doing things, and different.
That's right.
Yeah,
that's right. And the more that we can get involved with these projects, I think that will give us a bit of an insight, because we're still trying to form up what it is, what we're really talking about.
That's right.
For me, the influencing is so important. Just using an example of influence around, for example, if you look at a workflow of a product, I'll use that term product, from my perspective, RPL first, then assessments next, etc. So there's like a sequence that may not necessarily across the organisation be current practice. So there has to be arguments why you would think about RPL first and then, for example, assessments secondly, although they're interrelated and all that. So I think if we can be influencing in that, the way we think about the product design, that will be really beneficial. Like Lucia says, if we come in, the product's finished basically, and they say, "Oh God, that's right. What about the RPL?"
Yeah, that's right.
It's also that project plan too, I guess, because the business case will be high level, and it won't be at that point yet of the sequencing, etc. And I mean, we can, in terms of the product plan, we can sit there and read it, but we won't really understand it perhaps, or see the opportunities unless we're involved in discussions around the project plan, maybe.
But further into this, and going off a little bit on what Kim said, is that also too, when it comes to, from my experience when you're in the beginning of the business plan and looking, and yes, sequencing comes later, but there could have been work that we've already done that's similar, and again, not to reinvent the wheel, is if we're again in that stage where we can maybe offer advice, maybe if you do it this way. I mean, I don't know how much depth we have in this, but yeah.
I think that's a really good point.
Yeah, we could actually say, well, hey, we did this before, and this is kind of what we did, and we already have the products that we've used before, and we might have to tweak than reinventing the wheel every time a new product comes on board.
Yeah, because we're in a position across the skills points. Yeah, so that's leveraging our unique position.
That's right.
It's that balcony view that we hopefully will have that they won't have in the individual skills points.
Yes, exactly.
I had another suggestion, and I don't know where it fits, but it's about accountability. So what's our role, and maybe we have no role in this, about making sure that projects just don't run on and that budgets don't just drift. I know that the heads of skills points would be accountable for that, but do we have any role in sort of helping to facilitate the reporting and things like that?
I hope not, because that's what a product manager should be doing.
I know.
I hope they're doing their job. I assume they are.
But Caitlin, to your point, it could be in the context of analytics, analysing, and lessons learned and these types of things. What I mean, more holistic, if you like, sort of approach to that. So although the individual project managers will be managing the projects and they will change and all that stuff we know about, if we could have an overview of that somehow through analysing and this type of stuff, that might be valuable to the organisation as well.
Okay.
So to a certain extent, wouldn't we need to know the budget? Because, for example, in just, the roles that Dave and I have in assessment design, I mean, you can design assessment in so many different ways, and you can have so many, tools that you can use, but there has to be a limit as to whether, for example, the budget will change if you automate the assessment or you have a teacher marking it. So costing of the course at some stage as to what we can and can't do with the development of the product, isn't that something that we would need to understand, if we're within budget, out of budget, or really don't have the money to do that?
Yeah, and I think that will be a Skills Points responsibility, but I think we have to sort of think about how do we actually work with the Skills Points and understand that, because it might be a commercial product which would be different from our normal updates to a training package, or looking at I suppose this new One TAFE business model. So that will be different. So how do we sort of work there? And also with TAFE Digital, I'm not sure what their budget is either. So yeah, it's a bit of an interesting one. Just a bit mindful of the time. I think you get what I'm sort of saying. I've been trying to get you to think about what are the communications, what do we need to know, what do we need to do. So I was just having a look at if I was thinking about the communication plan and trying to determine at a very high level what it is that we need to know. But I think, all the things that you've talked about, there's something that I prepared earlier. I didn't do this. So it's good that we're all thinking in the same way. So I think if we think about this, and this is very high level, what I'm sort of thinking is that we need to do even more. We'll have to sort of drill down further and further and further. But this is the sort of thing I think for us to start to think about for a skills point. What do we need to know from them? What do they need to know from us? And then how do we actually work with that, building that business partnering relationship? So I think everything that you've said aligns to this. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, it certainly looks that way. Yep.
Yep.
Yeah, I've actually started, you said need to drill down. I've actually done something pretty similar to this, and it drills down, like I've got those exact questions almost, like, but it drills down more with the stakeholders' information sources, and why we want to communicate with them basically, and what questions might we ask, because in our 60-day plan, Caitlin and I thought talking points that we needed to think of some talking points and questions when we go out to people. So that's where it came from for us. So if you like, Jo, I can.
Thanks, Kim, and that's really good, because this is what we start. We have to work out how to. Like, I want an overarching plan, so I want to know how are we going to input into this. So if you want to put it, I don't know, in the actual SharePoint site, just have a quick look. Under PDS, there's like team documents. I've made full team documents a place where I've put the PDS 90-day plan. Can we talk about what the communication plan looks like? And all I wanted today was for you to think about it, because I sort of realised everybody's going on leave. This is just the initial thinking. I'm just trying to plant the seed. So any sort of information that you've got around this is what does a communication plan look like, just so that we're really clear about what is it, the information that we need, and what information can we provide. And it's not just around questions, it's also about, I think, Dave, you mentioned about analytics, the feedback, the reporting, how do we actually look at all of that? So I think that's really important. So I just want you to have a bit of a think. Kim, if you can share what you've done, that maybe the template will work better, if that's okay, for what you've got. But I think what we should do is have a document that everybody can contribute, if that's okay. And I think the only thing I would just take you back to is just this initial document that I've put up, thinking about the strategy, processes, resources and tools, because that's what the framework's about. It's around product, it's around development, and it's around support. So what is it that we're going to actually put in amongst all of that?
Jack, would you mind sharing that that SharePoint link to that document?
I will, absolutely. So this particular document is that we've been working on here is actually in the meeting. Dave, you could probably find it actually. It should be straight in now. I'll just have to update it for the conversations. I'll update it with what we've come up with. And the other thing too, which I think's a bit interesting, which I'll just go through, is we've got this high level one, and then we've also got the one for the assessment designer, the implementation, and then we've also got it for the e-potters. There's information in this space as well. So it should actually inform this as we develop it once we actually get the communication plan. So as an action, Joni, I'll send the links out to everybody with the intent that when everybody's back, probably next week, I'll have a, like what with planning, I'll set aside time to really go into the communication plan. I just wanted everyone just to have a think about, because we have to keep in mind that we have to develop the framework.
Jo, this is it gets tricky, doesn't it? Like, in terms of, my point is this is what our planning at the moment, the communication plan, is about establishment of product development support. It's not the plan for how we're going to operate in BAU. So if we start to mix the things up, it's going to get really confusing. So maybe we just will need to be clear that this is about establishment of the unit. And same with our, basically, of course, that's what our 90-day plans are doing as well. And it would probably look like quite a different communication plan when it's done for BAU or post setup.
Yeah, that's right. Sorry if I didn't make that clear. This is just for what we're doing right now to actually achieve the outcomes in the 90-day plan. So this is just to assist us to actually achieve the outcomes of the 90-day plan. So
sorry, that was clear. I was just saying out loud for myself, so that I could understand.
No, I appreciate it, Kim. Like, I'm sure there's other people thinking that, but it really is for this period of time, because it will become more formal post-June, because we'll have the framework and then we'll have more of a sense of what our business plan or work plan will be for the next 12 months. And we'll also, within that, I'm sure we'll have a communication plan as well. But this is really for us to just become established, for our people to actually know what we do, and for us to gather as much information as we can, and to develop that real business partnering model. How are we going to implement that post end of June? Okay. All right. So that's probably enough from me at the moment.